Welcome to Sequence the Future, where I pick the brains of the smartest people in the world of biotech. I have a really special guest with me here today. Mark McDonough is the Chief Executive Officer of PierianDx. Mark, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Would you mind kicking off our discussion? Just throw it back into the past. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and kind of your bio, how you got to where you are now.
All right, I'll try to be succinct here, but yeah. So, grew up in Rockville, Maryland. I'm the youngest of six kids, in a big kind of Irish Catholic family. Two very unselfish parents who provided my siblings and I with an awesome opportunity for education. So, went to Georgetown Prep on a scholarship there, and then went to college at Miami of Ohio on a ROTC scholarship. Great experience in college, degree in finance, and then spent 6 years in the Navy. Was a navigator on destroyer. That was kind of the highlight of the fun part, but I got to see 20 countries. Yeah, I got an opportunity to travel to 20 countries as a young man. Work with a lot of different people of incredibly diverse demographic background. So that was really good for me in terms of leading people of all, races and, ethnicities and different education. So it helped me get a great perspective. That coupled with what I was able to see traveling abroad, and you get to see kind of the best of all the worlds. You get to see some really posh, cool spots in terms of in Bali, Indonesia. I'll give you an example. And then right across the street from the resort, you see some of the sweetest, poorest kids in the world who are selling us things that we bought in droves from them for, a couple bucks, but that made their day. So really neat experience in the military.
And this is in your early 20s, Mark, when you were
so I was 22 to 28. And of course, you always remember the good times, right? So
naturally, yeah, by design, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. And then was fortunate enough to join a cancer diagnostic company right out of the Navy, called McDonough Medical Systems at the time. McDonough had a model of looking for junior military officers. That was the kind of sales rep they wanted, was someone who we joke was, probably too stupid to realize you shouldn't work 70 hours a week. But they felt like, okay, if we found these men and women with the right DNA, then we could kind of train them on everything for pathology and oncology. So I lucked into that. It was a great opportunity there, and spent 4 years there. I was promoted 3 times along the way. And then after I did a year in high tech at EMC, I joined some former McDonough people at another cancer diagnostics, a young startup in the reference lab world called US Labs, and had a lot of fun there and a great run there over 6 years. And then went into a molecular diagnostic firm called Pathwork Diagnostics for 4 years, with a very groundbreaking microarray 2400 gene assay to help people with cancers that they couldn't detect with conventional means. So we call it unknown primary cancer. And in order to truly test or treat, a cancer, and today with our targeted therapies, you need to know typically the origin of the mutation and what tumor type it is. So we had a test that really helped in very, very unique cases. After that, spent about 5.5, 6 years at a reproductive health molecular diagnostic company called Combi Matrix. That was also a microarray based technology. And there I had an opportunity after a year of working for someone who was our CEO at US Labs, where I was promoted into being the CEO. So I was kind of thrown into being a CEO of a public company.
Okay.
was a lot of fun when Judd said, "Hey, I'm going to retire." He'd had a heck of a career. There really wasn't a succession plan, Jeff. That was what the interesting thing was. But
wow,
he sat me down at a one-on-one and said, "I've had a great career, but I'm ready to turn over the reins. Would you like to do it and talk to your wife? And I'm like, okay,
Incredible.
all right, let's go. It was a unique opportunity. And then we were able to lead that company to a very successful exit, an acquisition by Invitae, who's a big player in our space and
Yep.
inherited cancer, and have a lot of admiration for the team there, the CEO Sean George and Randy Scott and others. And since then, I've ran another small private company called Immunist.ai and done some advisory work for a number of firms. And then this past November, joined a company as CEO that I'm super excited about what we're doing. And that's a company called PierianDx. And at Pierian, we are truly enabling the democratization of clinical genomics by partnering with companies like Illumina, who has 75 to 80% of the sequencers in the world are Illumina sequencers.
Yep.
And with partners like Invitae, Archer, and another company called Pillar, who makes great assays. We are using our software. We're a software as a service bioinformatics platform to help take data from sequencers all the way through reporting to help the patient at the end of the day sit down with his or her oncologist and get a report where there's clinical actionability. So PierianDx does a lot of that behind the scenes work on taking that data to a report that tells you, here's what you have, here are therapies, here's what the ASCO guidelines say, here's what the latest publications are in PubMed related to this, so that the patient can be more informed. So really exciting about what we're building at Pierian. So a little bit long-winded, but hopefully that gives you a good picture of kind of background.
Absolutely. What a rich history and interesting career you've led. You obviously have honed in healthcare, medical diagnostics, cancer genomics. Is this something that you were always interested in? Did you strategize getting into the realm that you're in, or did it just, you kind of fall into place?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So when I was coming out of, I like to tell stories. So when I was coming out of the military, I had one offer from Frito-Lay. And
Very different industry.
Yeah, and I was being pursued by Ventana, and this gentleman from Frito-Lay, I'm in their Dallas office, and he was a super cool guy. Like, I would have loved working for this guy, but he literally looks at me, and he was trying to close me. Like, I already had. He's like, and the coolest thing about this, man, is that this is not like, you're not dealing with like cancer treatment here. This is like selling chips. And he meant that as like, this isn't, you're not doing rocket science or something. And
selling chips.
I was like, if this dude knew the irony is that I'm looking to a cancer diagnostics company. And so, no, I did luck into joining Ventana. The process was very quick. The regional manager, who's been a very successful guy in our business to this day, knew what he wanted when he was hiring people. We had like an hour interview. And then it was just like, hey, do you want it or not? I'll send a fax on Monday. It was literally like that. And
you were in.
Yeah, and I was in, and I didn't know what to expect, but I did know that I didn't understand a lot of the medical, and that I had to study. And that was the one thing in the first year. I really worked hard to understand what antibodies did and what our instrument did, even though I really didn't have the context around the pathology lab until you go in and start talking to doctors. And then we had some good mentors and trainers at Ventana who just said, look, these pathologists love to teach. So just sit down with them at the microscope and just ask them questions, and you'll be amazed. They'll just start talking, and then you'll just learn. And that's what happened at Ventana. And for about 9 months, I heard words, but it didn't really process. And then seriously, it was unbelievable. Like this, after about a year, things just started all
clicking.
And I was even freaking myself out. Like, I know what the hell they're talking about with breast cancer and colon cancer. And so that was really a neat experience and a great company.
I love that. And no doubt each position probably has contributed to a certain level of your development, and then you transition. How have you known when the time is right to transition? You've had so many interesting pieces of your puzzle. Now you're into obviously high leadership positions. How have you known when the time is right to transition?
I just, a lot of times you just trust it, but there's always apprehension. I know when my wife and I, when I had the opportunity to be the VP of sales at US Labs, we went to, we were living in San Diego. We went to a movie. This was like 2006. And I couldn't even enjoy the movie because even though I knew what to do as a regional manager and a district manager and a rep before, I was, before I went up there the next day and drove up to 60 miles, I was still, there was angst, right? I wasn't even watching the movie. My mind was a million miles away. I didn't sleep well that night. So each time, it's like anything in life. I think once you start doing, it's what I try to teach my wife and I try to teach our kids. It's like, you can be anxious about something, which is fair. But then once you just start doing it and tackling it, a lot of that stress just falls off, right? So, so for my promotions along the way, which I've been fortunate, you do your best. I as a manager, I wasn't perfect. At first I tried to have people who worked like me. I realized that, that wasn't always the best style. You need different people. So you make mistakes along the way too, as they say, crack a few eggs or whatever. Absolutely. And so hasn't been perfect, but I've enjoyed it. And now I do feel very, comfortable leading an organization. I'm comfortable in my management style and, still not perfect, but it's good.
That's good stuff. When you wake up, Mark, not everybody wakes up on the right side of the bed, right? If you wake up and maybe you're not quite feeling yourself or maybe a little bit down for whatever reason, do you have anything that helps fire you up or any type of morning ritual? I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, morning rituals interesting. So I've always been lucky to be kind of a morning person. It's just later in the evening where I'll just hit a wall, but for me, a good distraction is like exercise. If I'm super stressed out about something, just go for a jog or, lately I've been trying to get in the pool a little bit, but, those are ways to do it. And then just to the point that we were making about that, my wife and I try to teach our children too, is just once you start, if I do wake up and I have a lot to do, just getting a couple of things done off the list, even if they're small, kind of gives you momentum, right? If you're not feeling great about something. And if you are kind of, you wake up and you are charged and ready to go, then it's just, I think that's the key is for me is, as you can tell, I'm a high energy person, but it's really doing versus overly thinking. And that's part of our military background is, one of the cliches is, 90% of a good decision on time is better than 100% too late. Right. So
that's a good one.
It's kind of going after it really.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of eating the frog.
It's to refresh me though.
Yeah. It's oftentimes there's something on your list that you're dreading doing or not looking forward to. And sometimes attacking that thing, like first thing in the morning can often get you on that get you going,
I like that one. I like that one. And it's really true, right? Because whether it's a frog or even a lot of times we make things a lot bigger than they are. Yeah. Right. So especially stuff we don't dig doing. We all have stuff we don't like to do. And you're right. It gets on. So I love technology, but I'm also old school and kind of lists and crossing off things on the list. And so that's always, if there's something there that's been a bugaboo, it's a good feeling of satisfaction to X that bad boy off,
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. If you've mentioned, obviously, wife and children, as your responsibilities have increased in your vocation, how have you found the ability to manage and balance your personal and your work life?
Well, I think I've made, again, there's definitely, so my career has gone, in some ways, many people think it's gone amazing. There's other things, when I look back, even at Ventana, where I just US Labs was a rocket ship and it was great, but Ventana was a rocket ship and I probably left that company too early. But the things that I would do again are just, I traveled a lot. So, right after we had our first baby and my wife needed me more, I made decisions then that, traveling and doing stuff that if I could do it all again, there'd be a lot more balance early. I have tried to really check that now, and COVID's been a kind of an amazing excuse, but it's taught us habits that you can be very effective remotely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I've, in the last year, I think I've traveled three 3 or 4 times, and one of them was personal when my mom passed away. So it's like that's been a lot. That the older I've gotten, you know, I'm trying to you learn some things, and don't get me wrong, there's also I have more authority to do that too, and liberties that you, when you're on your way up, you don't always have as many liberties to do some of the things you need to do. But there's certainly some things I would do differently on balance 10 to 15 years ago than today, for sure.
Okay, interesting insight. I would also say that, you know, for all of us, I think that we're doing the best that we know how at any given age.
Exactly.
Right? Based on the wisdom that you have then. And I would imagine there's no person on earth that can just look back only fondly at all of the decisions they've made. You know, it's like, well, at that time I was doing the best that I knew how, generally speaking.
No, it's true. That is true. And there's also, you learn that there's also some things you should have done differently, but you're right. I hear you. I think it's multifactorial, right? And I think that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah, fair enough. How a couple more questions. I know we're under 10 minutes here.
Yeah, no, I've got like 3 or 4 minutes if we can do that.
Okay. What is the one thing you're looking to in the next decade of personalized medicine?
I think, you know, I don't know if we're ever going to, so I don't want to sound like the naysayer. Curing cancer is always going to be difficult because the mutations are so complex. But with personalized medicine, if we can just find ways to prolong folks' opportunity to live in the most pleasant way possible, I think that's really needs to be one of our objectives. So if we could cure things, that would be unbelievable. And we're working hard on it. And I'm not as much on the therapeutic side of things, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Sure.
But you know, on the diagnostic side, if we can continue to deliver tools that allow us to have therapies, then that really have the minimal side effects that people can. It's not just about living longer; it's about living longer well.
That's a great way to create meaning. I really like that answer, Mark. Last question I'll ask you is: do you have a favorite quote or maybe current motto that you're living by, and why?
So there's a funny one that we live by. That's
just,
you know, when because we're very strategic at my company, but we've got a lot of big opportunities in front of us. So I often say the alligator closest to the boat. So that's a phrase that means, all right, let's kill the alligator closest to the boat before we move on. And then obviously I'll attribute it to Vince Lombardi because that's where I heard it, but I don't know if he made it up. And the other one is, you know, crisis, the character is not made in crisis, it's revealed. And so those are things too that, you know, I hope that we reveal positive character, you know, when we're under pressure. And so those are a couple that come to mind.
Love it. That's really good stuff. Thank you for the insight. Mark, if there's any of the listeners that want to follow you, where is the best place to do that?
Yeah, you know, LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm not as, and I don't have a very active Twitter handle, but I'm incredibly, I will say on LinkedIn and, you know, email to the company. I'm incredibly responsive. I'm a zero inbox guy. And, you know, I try to, within the confines of my time, like if someone needs things where I can potentially help, you know, I will certainly think about that and take action, because I know that I believe we're all kind of fortunate of opportunities we've had along the way, right? So
absolutely,
if I can perpetuate that for other people, I will. But thanks, I've really enjoyed this. This is great.
Thank you for your insight, advice, and for sharing your story, Mark.